How well do you truly know the people closest to you? The ones you trust with your heart, your secrets, your life? Darlene Hargrove thought she knew. She believed in love, loyalty, and family values, principles she had built her life around. But sometimes, trust can be a dangerous thing. When Darlene's life ended at 67, she left behind more than just memories. What she left shook her family to its core and revealed a story no one could have predicted. A $1.7 million insurance policy, not left to her daughter or husband, but to someone no one expected. A betrayal that ran deeper than anyone could have imagined. Darlene's silence concealed a devastating reality, one that wouldn't come to light until it was too late. Her life, her choices, and her ultimate justice would reveal a story that demanded to be told. And in the end, only one question remains: why? Stay with me as we uncover the truth. Welcome to True Crime Seeker. Thank you, my viewers, especially my subscribers, for your support as we continue to bring you daily untold true crime stories. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Darlene Hargrove's life was a testament to resilience. Born into modest beginnings, she grew up understanding the value of hard work and determination. Life was never handed to her on a silver platter. Every step forward was earned through grit and perseverance. Darlene's journey was one of reinvention, a story of a woman who refused to let her circumstances define her. In her early years, Darlene married her first husband, a man she thought would be her partner for life. Together, they built a family and dreamed of a future filled with stability and love. But dreams don't always unfold as planned. Her husband's untimely death left her a young widow with a daughter to raise and no roadmap for what lay ahead. For years, Darlene worked tirelessly to provide for her only child, Tiffany. She poured herself into her career, rising through the ranks in the real estate industry, a field where her sharp instincts and keen eye for detail earned her respect and financial success. Despite her professional achievements, Darlene remained grounded, her values deeply rooted in family, trust, and honesty. Her love for Tiffany was at the center of her world. Darlene was determined to give her daughter everything she had never had growing up. She showered her with opportunities, from the best schools to lavish vacations. But love is complex, and relationships don't always unfold as neatly as we hope. Tiffany grew up spoiled by Darlene's sacrifices, yet emotionally distant. While Darlene wanted to instill discipline and gratitude in her daughter, Tiffany often interpreted her mother's efforts as controlling. This tension created a fragile bond between them, a bond Darlene worked tirelessly to strengthen, but which always seemed just out of reach. Years passed, and Darlene found herself yearning for companionship. That's when Roland Whitaker, a 53-year-old man, entered her life. Roland was charming, with an energy and charisma that drew people in. 13 years her junior, he seemed to offer something Darlene had been missing: a sense of vitality, someone to share her successes and ease her burdens. Their relationship raised eyebrows. Darlene, a seasoned and financially independent woman, was seen as the stabilizing force, while Roland, a man with a past full of questionable decisions, seemed to thrive on her stability. But Darlene didn't care about public opinion. For the first time in years, she felt like someone was truly paying attention to her, and she let herself believe that Roland's intentions were genuine. Deep down, though, Darlene couldn't entirely silence her doubts. Roland's charm occasionally felt too calculated, his words sometimes too rehearsed. There were small things, a story that didn't quite add up, a moment when his gaze lingered too long on something or someone else. Darlene dismissed these feelings, chalking them up to her own insecurities. She wanted to believe in the promise of love again, even if part of her remained guarded. But Roland wasn't the only challenge in Darlene's personal life. Her relationship with Tiffany continued to be strained. Tiffany, now an adult, had grown into a woman who craved attention and validation, but rarely reciprocated the love and effort her mother poured into her. To Darlene's dismay, Tiffany's behavior often mirrored that of someone who took things for granted. Darlene tried to guide Tiffany, offering advice and support, but their conversations frequently ended in frustration. Tiffany felt her mother was overbearing, while Darlene felt her daughter was ungrateful. Despite the friction, Darlene never stopped loving Tiffany. She believed that with time, they could mend their relationship. The cracks in Darlene's world started small, almost imperceptible. Roland's charm began to wear thin, and Tiffany's actions often left Darlene feeling unappreciated. Yet Darlene, ever the optimist, held on to hope that things would improve. She had rebuilt her life once before. Surely she could do it again. Darlene's love for her family never wavered, even as doubt began to creep in. She spent years carefully balancing her roles as a mother and wife, trying to keep her family intact. But love, trust, and loyalty are delicate things, and sometimes even the strongest among us cannot see the storm approaching until it's too late. Darlene's life had been a series of battles, but this time she would face one she never saw coming, a betrayal so profound that it would rewrite everything she thought she knew about love, family, and loyalty. It started with moments that seemed innocent, a lingering glance, shared laughter that lasted a beat too long, and the casual ease of proximity that blurred the lines of propriety. Roland Whittaker and Tiffany Hargrove's relationship didn't begin with grand gestures or obvious signs. It crept into existence quietly, almost imperceptibly, hidden in the spaces where trust should have resided. Roland had always been charismatic. His charm was one of the reasons Darlene had fallen for him, even against her better judgment. But that same charisma, so magnetic and disarming, began to redirect its focus. Tiffany, vibrant and hungry for attention, found herself drawn to Roland's affable demeanor. At first, their interactions seemed harmless, an extension of the family dynamic Darlene had worked so hard to nurture. But Tiffany's perspective adds another layer to this betrayal. In her mind, she wasn't simply engaging in a reckless affair, she was filling a void. For years, she had felt overshadowed by her mother's success and suffocated by what she perceived as Darlene's overbearing love. Tiffany wanted to carve out a space for herself, to be seen and valued in a way she believed Darlene never truly managed to achieve. Roland became her escape. He noticed her in a way that felt intoxicating, the compliments, the laughter, the way he leaned in just a little too close during their conversations. It all felt thrillingly different from the structured and stifling relationship she shared with her mother. What started as attention-seeking morphed into something darker. Tiffany convinced herself that this was love, that Roland was her ally in a world where she often felt misunderstood. As their secret relationship deepened, small moments of betrayal became harder to hide. Darlene, sharp and observant, began to notice changes, gradual shifts in behavior that gnawed at the edges of her trust. Roland, who once made an effort to reassure her, grew distant, distracted, even evasive. Tiffany, too, became harder to reach, her once distant demeanor now accompanied by an air of defiance that Darlene couldn't quite place. It wasn't one moment that revealed the truth to Darlene. It was a series of them, like pieces of a puzzle slowly coming together. A missed glance, a conversation that abruptly ended when she entered the room, the inexplicable tension that settled like a cloud whenever Roland and Tiffany were together. The pieces didn't make sense on their own, but together they painted a picture Darlene could no longer ignore. Darlene's discovery of the affair was a silent storm. The realization crashed over her, leaving her reeling, yet outwardly she remained composed. Her heartbreak was profound, not just because of Roland's betrayal, but because it was Tiffany, her daughter, who had crossed that line. The two people she had devoted her life to had conspired, knowingly or not, to tear it apart. They were having an affair behind her back, but Darlene didn't confront them. She didn't scream or cry or demand answers. She kept her pain locked away, choosing silence over chaos. Perhaps she knew that confronting them would change nothing. Perhaps she feared that voicing the truth would break her beyond repair. Instead, Darlene made a decision that no one saw coming. Without a word, Darlene met with her attorney and quietly altered her life insurance policy. The $1.7 million that had once been promised to Roland was now entrusted to Mavis Thompson, her loyal housekeeper and confidant of over 30 years. Mavis, who had been there for every milestone in Darlene's life, was the one person Darlene knew she could trust. Mavis had been more than an employee. She was a silent witness to Darlene's joys and struggles. Over time, she had become Darlene's safe harbor, someone she could confide in without fear of judgment or betrayal. Mavis listened when Darlene needed to talk and stayed silent when Darlene needed her secrets kept. It was Mavis who first noticed the changes in Darlene's health, who stood by her side as she faced a slow and mysterious decline, unaware of the full extent of what was happening. Darlene's decision to make Mavis the beneficiary was more than an act of revenge. It was an act of trust. She knew that Mavis would honor her wishes, that the money would be safe in her hands. It was Darlene's final way of taking control in a world that had spun beyond her grasp. She never let on that she knew about the affair. Her silence was a double-edged sword, a testament to her strength, but also a burden that weighed heavily on her. Darlene's world had crumbled, yet she carried on with quiet dignity, determined to see her plan through to the end. In the end, it wasn't Darlene's words that exposed the betrayal, it was her actions. By entrusting her legacy to Mavis, she set the stage for the truth to unravel, piece by painful piece. Even after she was gone, her decision was both her justice and her farewell, a silent declaration that love and loyalty could not be bought or betrayed without consequence. And while Darlene never lived to see the fallout, her final act ensured that the betrayal she endured would not go unanswered. Darlene Hargrove's decline began so gradually that no one, not even those closest to her, suspected foul play at first. At 67, she had been in good health, a vibrant woman who took pride in her independence. But then came the signs, small at first. Fatigue crept into her days, making even small tasks seem overwhelming. Her appetite waned, and she began losing weight, attributing it to stress or the natural toll of aging. As weeks turned into months, her symptoms worsened. Nausea became a daily struggle. Her skin took on a pale, almost sickly hue, and she complained of persistent headaches that no amount of rest could ease. Visits to the doctor brought no clarity. The tests were inconclusive, leaving Darlene and those around her searching for answers in the dark. Specialists were consulted, but each one seemed to offer only more questions instead of solutions. For a woman who had built her life on strength and resilience, this mysterious illness was a devastating blow. Darlene tried to push through, refusing to let her failing health define her. Yet as her condition deteriorated, even her unyielding spirit couldn't mask the undeniable truth. Something was deeply wrong. Mavis Thompson, Darlene's trusted housekeeper and confidant, was one of the first to notice that Darlene's decline wasn't merely natural. Mavis had been by Darlene's side for decades, and her sharp instincts picked up on changes that others dismissed. She noticed the way Roland's demeanor shifted when Darlene's health became a topic of conversation. His concern felt rehearsed, his care oddly performative. Then there was Tiffany. Mavis observed how Tiffany seemed strangely unaffected by her mother's suffering. While Darlene's friends and extended family expressed genuine worry, Tiffany appeared distracted, often brushing off Mavis's inquiries with vague assurances that "Mom will be fine." It was a cold indifference that didn't sit right with Mavis. Over time, other peculiarities began to surface. Mavis started noticing patterns, Roland and Tiffany sharing whispered conversations that abruptly ended when Darlene entered the room. On more than one occasion, she caught Tiffany slipping something into Darlene's tea. At first, Mavis dismissed it as medication, perhaps prescribed by a doctor. But the timing of Darlene's worsening symptoms always seemed to coincide with these moments. Mavis's instincts told her something was wrong, but she had no proof. She was torn between loyalty to Darlene and the fear of making an unfounded accusation. Instead, she stayed vigilant, quietly observing, hoping to piece together the truth. When Darlene passed away, it was a moment of heartbreak, but also relief that her suffering had ended. To everyone around her, her death seemed like the natural conclusion to a prolonged illness. Everyone, that is, except Mavis. Darlene's funeral brought the family together in mourning, but Mavis couldn't shake the unease that had been building in her for months. As the days passed, she began replaying every moment, every action, every decision that didn't sit right with her. And then came the shock that changed everything. The autopsy report revealed traces of poison in Darlene's system, a poison that had been administered over a long period of time. Mavis's suspicions were confirmed. Darlene hadn't died of natural causes. She had been poisoned. For Mavis, this revelation was both a vindication of her instincts and a call to action. She knew she couldn't stay silent. Gathering her courage, she went to the authorities, recounting everything she had observed over the past year. The whispered conversations, the behaviors, the time she had seen Tiffany with Darlene's tea. Her detailed account became the cornerstone of the investigation. It was Mavis's unwavering dedication to Darlene that brought the truth to light. Her statement to the police painted a chilling picture of premeditation and betrayal, implicating both Roland and Tiffany in a crime that shocked everyone who had known Darlene. Darlene's death was no longer a mystery. It was a calculated act, carried out by the very people she had loved and trusted. And thanks to Mavis's courage, justice was finally within reach. As Darlene Hargrove was laid to rest, her husband, Roland Whitaker, appeared to grieve. But behind the facade of mourning, his actions betrayed a different priority. Without waiting for the investigation into her death to conclude, Roland began the process of claiming her $1.7 million life insurance policy. To those who knew him, his haste might have seemed strange, but to Roland, the money was the end goal all along. Unbeknownst to him, the investigation into Darlene's death had already uncovered disturbing signs. The autopsy revealed the presence of poison in her system, administered over a prolonged period. With this revelation, the police began to dig deeper, unraveling the circumstances of her mysterious illness and her final days. As investigators looked closer, their attention turned to Darlene's closest family members. Tiffany Hargrove, her daughter, and Roland were the last people to have regular access to Darlene in her declining state. And while their outward behavior gave little away, the cracks in their stories began to emerge under scrutiny. Tiffany was the first to be called in for questioning. The police didn't approach her with accusations, but rather with a strategy designed to break through her defenses. They began with kindness, presenting her with old photos of Darlene, pictures of a mother and daughter at the park, celebrating birthdays, and sharing quiet, loving moments. The emotional weight of these memories began to take a toll on Tiffany. At first, she tried to maintain composure, insisting she had done nothing wrong. But as the police pressed her, her resolve began to crumble. "You loved your mother, didn't you?" one detective asked, his tone soft yet probing. "She gave you everything. So why?" Tiffany's eyes welled with tears, her voice breaking as she responded, "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought—" Her words trailed off, but the detectives seized the opening. They continued to press, their questions carefully calibrated to evoke guilt and emotional conflict. Tiffany, overwhelmed and cornered by the weight of her own actions, finally broke. She confessed to poisoning Darlene. The words spilled out like a flood. She could no longer hold back. She admitted to slipping small doses into her mother's tea over months, a plan she had carried out under Roland's direction. The police didn't stop with Tiffany's confession. They needed to know the extent of Roland's involvement. When asked why she had done it, Tiffany's response shocked even the seasoned investigators. "I did it because he told me to," she said. "He said we'd finally be free to be together, to live the life we wanted, with the money to make it happen." Tiffany revealed chilling details about Roland's manipulation. He had convinced her that Darlene's death was necessary for their future. He played on her insecurities, promising love and a new life, while using her as a pawn in his scheme. Armed with Tiffany's confession, the police turned their attention to Roland. When confronted, his reaction was predictable. He denied everything, dismissing Tiffany's statements as lies made out of desperation. "She's making this up," he insisted. "I had nothing to do with any of it." But his protests rang hollow in the face of mounting evidence. The forensic team had been working tirelessly, piecing together the physical evidence that would tie Roland and Tiffany to Darlene's poisoning. The toxicology report confirmed the presence of a specific poison in Darlene's system, one that was commonly found in household products, but required precise knowledge to administer in lethal doses over time. Investigators discovered receipts for these substances, purchased under Tiffany's name, but with Roland's financial backing. Bank statements revealed transactions linked to Roland, suggesting that he had funded the materials needed for the crime. Further analysis of Darlene's belongings uncovered traces of the poison in her tea set and kitchen items. These findings corroborated Tiffany's confession and painted a damning picture of premeditation. The police also uncovered text messages between Roland and Tiffany, filled with coded language and discussions that, when viewed in context, clearly outlined their plan. One particularly incriminating message from Roland read, "Stay patient. We'll have everything we want soon enough." With the forensic evidence in hand, and Tiffany's confession implicating him, Roland's claims of innocence began to crumble. His attempts to deflect blame only made him appear more calculating. The investigation was now airtight. The combined weight of Tiffany's emotional confession, the forensic evidence, and Roland's suspicious financial transactions left no room for doubt. The detectives had pieced together a chilling narrative. A man who married for security, manipulated a vulnerable young woman, and orchestrated the slow, calculated death of a wife who had trusted him. As the case moved toward trial, Roland and Tiffany's betrayals were laid bare for all to see. Darlene's life had ended in pain, but her death set in motion the uncovering of a truth that would ensure justice was served. The investigation revealed more than just a crime. It exposed the darkest depths of greed, manipulation, and betrayal. Darlene Hargrove's legacy would not be defined by the people who tried to destroy her, but by the truth that finally brought them down. The trial of Roland Whittaker and Tiffany Hargrove began. This was more than a criminal case. It was a story of betrayal, greed, and the quiet strength of a woman whose love and trust had been repaid with unthinkable acts. The courtroom buzzed with tension as the trial began. Family members, neighbors, and the media filled every available seat, eager to witness the unraveling of a story that had already shaken the community. At the center of it all were two people: Roland, his face expressionless, and Tiffany, whose eyes betrayed the weight of her guilt. The prosecution laid out its case methodically, beginning with a chilling recount of Darlene Hargrove's mysterious illness and her ultimate demise. Forensic experts testified about the poison found in her system, explaining how it had been administered in small doses over months, ensuring her slow and agonizing decline. Witnesses took the stand, including friends and neighbors who described Darlene as a kind and generous woman. Their emotional testimonies painted a picture of a life cut short by the people she had trusted most. But the trial's most pivotal moment came when Mavis Thompson took the stand. Darlene's loyal housekeeper and confidant spoke with a quiet strength that commanded the courtroom's attention. She recounted her decades-long relationship with Darlene, sharing intimate details about her employer's character, her struggles, and the gradual decline that Mavis had witnessed firsthand. Then came the revelations. Mavis described how she had noticed strange behavior from Roland and Tiffany in the months leading up to Darlene's death. She detailed the whispered conversations, the times she had seen Tiffany preparing Darlene's tea, and her growing suspicions that something was terribly wrong. Her testimony was supported by the forensic evidence and Tiffany's own confession, which the prosecution played for the court. In the recording, Tiffany admitted to poisoning her mother under Roland's direction, her voice trembling with guilt and fear. The courtroom was silent as the weight of Mavis's words sank in. Her testimony not only solidified the prosecution's case, but also provided a voice for Darlene, a woman who had suffered in silence, but whose story was now being told in full. Tiffany Hargrove's defense painted her as a manipulated victim, a young woman who had fallen under the influence of a controlling and charismatic man. Her attorney argued that Roland had preyed on Tiffany's vulnerabilities, convincing her to commit unthinkable acts in the name of love. But Tiffany's own guilt was undeniable. She wept openly throughout the trial, her remorse evident in every expression, every word. When the prosecution questioned her, she admitted to her actions, though she placed much of the blame on Roland. "I didn't want to do it," she said through tears. "I thought he loved me. I thought this was the only way." The jury deliberated for hours before returning with a verdict. Tiffany was found guilty of second-degree murder, with the court acknowledging her manipulated role in the crime. She was sentenced to life imprisonment, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Her reaction was a mix of relief and despair. While she had avoided the harshest penalty, the reality of spending decades behind bars was a crushing blow. Her guilt and regret were palpable, and as she was led out of the courtroom, she whispered an apology to no one in particular, a small, broken plea for forgiveness that would likely never come. Roland Whittaker, on the other hand, showed no such remorse. Throughout the trial, he maintained his innocence, even as the evidence against him mounted. He denied orchestrating the crime, dismissed Tiffany's accusations as fabrications, and blamed everyone but himself. The jury saw through his lies. The prosecution painted Roland as the mastermind, a man who had married Darlene for financial gain and manipulated her daughter into carrying out his deadly plan. When the verdict was read, guilty of first-degree murder, Roland barely flinched. The judge, in delivering the sentence, spared no words in condemning his actions. "You betrayed the trust of a woman who gave you everything," the judge said. "Your callous disregard for human life, your greed, and your manipulation of others for your own gain are reprehensible. You will spend the rest of your life paying for your crimes." Roland was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Tiffany, the public's reaction was more complicated. While many condemned her actions, some expressed sympathy for the manipulation she had endured. Still, few could forgive her role in her mother's death. The trial became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked greed and the devastating consequences of betrayal. Darlene Hargrove's story, though tragic, left an indelible mark, ensuring that justice was served and that her legacy would not be forgotten. Darlene Hargrove's death left behind a legacy of resilience and quiet justice. Her decision to change her life insurance beneficiary ensured that neither Roland nor Tiffany profited from their betrayal. Instead, Mavis Thompson, her loyal confidant, received the $1.7 million, honoring Darlene's trust and values. Roland's life in prison was marked by isolation and bitterness as he faced the consequences of his greed. Tiffany, consumed by guilt, spent her days writing letters to her mother, searching for forgiveness that would never come. Darlene's story, though tragic, was a triumph of justice. Her final actions ensured the truth came to light and that her legacy was preserved. Darlene's story challenges us to reflect on betrayal and justice. What would you do in her shoes? Would you have made the same decisions? Her silence in life spoke volumes after her death, ensuring her truth was heard. Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more stories of resilience and justice, subscribe to our channel. Darlene's courage reminds us that even in silence, actions can echo louder than words.